So warm welcome, everybody. It was a longer break. I was traveling a lot, and but I came back with some good inspiration for our call today. And as Robin said already, we looked at the beginning of this course on rejuvenation, or what it means that I live a lifestyle that is in alignment with life. Basically, if spirituality is a way to say what is a life in alignment with the basic fundamental principles of life, so then the most rejuvenating lifestyle is the one where we learn about the inner energetics of our bodies, of our psyches, of the cosmos, and we more and more live in alignment with those principles. And so which means, as we talked about it already a little bit in other MP classes, the meridian or the law, not just the external law in our kind of law books, but the law as the voice of the divine. Mystical principles, I understand it as the language of the divine. That's how the breath exhales the universe. That's how everything is in movement. And I believe also in the discussion about life or death, we need to keep in mind that oftentimes we are looking at life and death and life parts of our lives and life situations in our life from the perspective of separation, as if we were kind of separate laptops instead of being workstations of a huge supercomputer. That's a very different way of addressing life or looking at life and understanding life. So if we are one supercomputer, if we are all connected through kind of a cloud, to use modern terms for it, so then life and death is different than when I think of myself as a separate entity within a big world where objects are bouncing around and we are just finding ourselves in the midst of a kind of a mechanistic worldview. And the mystical teachings always refer back to that supercomputer. And I think that's, first of all, something to play with, like as a kind of a philosophical question. And it's also part of our contemplation. Often when people had awakening experiences, or when saints described their states that they were in when they had enlightenment moments, it refers more to one supercomputer than many separate laptops, many separate persons that compose a reality. And so that's one thing. And so we looked at living in alignment with my life energy, getting to know my life energy, learning to listen to my own life, learning to listen to the energy that I get, like when you remember the essence that we get through our parents, and that we live in a way that we take care of our life energy, not in an egoistic sense, but in an awareness sense, so that we take care of embodiment, that we take care of the charges that we have. As you remember, meditation, space, light, life energy, and base energy. There are many different charges that charge the human battery. And the human battery is kind of like a generator. And in the mystical sense, if we were to say, how do we get the temple? In MP1, we started off with saying there's a temple on a mountain, and that temple is the enlightened state. That's where the flame, creation, and emptiness, the temple, space, deep, deep consciousness, are not two. And then we said there are all these kind of pathways down into the valley of separation. That's where life is happening as we know it in the marketplace. And I believe if you want that the temple as kind of a recognition of a God consciousness takes its seat in culture, so that not only a few lamas that sit in Tibetan caves, or a few saints that went off and kind of retreated and practiced somewhere, and then maybe they came back. But if you want the temple as a metaphor, not only as a metaphor, the temple as a recognition of the divine consciousness within our culture, let's say in the middle of Manhattan, then it's gonna need us to live in alignment. Then we are the puzzle pieces of the temple. Like you draw a temple on a puzzle, and you dismantle, you split all the puzzle pieces, and then you try to put them back together. We are the puzzle pieces, and every one of us has a small part of the temple. So we are basically the human temple. And I believe that a culture that lives in alignment is one that listens to the conductor, like listens to the higher organizing principle of life. And when we all listen to it, we all have a different expression. We all come with different abilities, intelligences. We all come with different interests, motivations. And at the same time, we're all powered by, powered by God. So means the electricity that runs through us, there's an electricity in our physical body, but then the higher electricity is kind of a cosmic force. And listening to that more unified field is listening to the main conductor. And every one of us plays an instrument. And so if you want to have a temple in the marketplace, if you want that our marketplace will shine, if you want it filled with the light of the divine, the presence and the love of the divine, the compassion, the clarity, so then we will need to live in alignment with that inner core principle. And that's hugely important, because today I would love to shift our conversation a bit into the we space. What is the we space, and why is the we space important? For example, if somebody dies in a family, why it's important that the we holds a space? Why is it important mystically, and why is it important from a very human perspective? And of course, in the best sense, they are one. And I love to speak about it as thresholds. Thresholds in our life are hugely important. A threshold can be a marriage, can be a birth, can be like when we become parents, when we also, of course, our birth was a threshold, and is when we become grandparents, and it's also when we die. Why? Because these are transition periods, and in the transition phases, when our energy changes, everybody who has kids will know that in the moment you became a father or a mother, something was very different. Why? Because it's a threshold. In the moment you were born, something was very different, obviously. And in the moment we die, something is very different. And it seems like, yeah, of course, but then it's a good question, what's different? And what is different, seen from an energetic worldview, is that in those deep moments, the veils of life are more open. When you're part of a birth, you feel how the subtle world opens up, and there's a deep kind of rain of subtle energy that comes with the child into the room. There's something open. And when we come back for a moment to sacred texts, what is the difference between a sacred text and a regular text? The regular text is closed. Why it's closed? Because it describes a possibility of life. It describes time. It writes a book about whatever, some technological development, some scientific research, but it describes something within the time. And it describes one possibility or one aspect of life. The sacred text is open because it's not closing reality to one possibility. It's opening reality to all possibilities. And that's why the sacred text has letters that are open, and thresholds in our life remind us of open letters. Oh, an open letter is a letter when I read it, it like I read a sacred book, and the sacred text becomes a fiery letter within my consciousness. It's like if you saw it in a computer animation, somebody reading a book, and suddenly inside it becomes fiery letters. What does it mean, fiery letters? It reminds us to the flame on the mountain in the temple, even if depends on the intensity of the sacred text. It has a transmission, and it's not information. Mystical teachings are never information. Even if they convey information, that's just secondary. The primary aspect of a mystical teaching is a transmission. It's something that becomes alive in me, that starts to resonate in my nervous system, that starts to resonate in my body, and it's kind of an activation. And within, when I read a sacred text, I connect to a higher consciousness where the text came from. And usually the text didn't come from a person, the text came through a person. And when the text came through, it has a load of energy. It has a transmission. So when we think of passages as mystical, or thresholds as mystical passages, when a child comes in, we see it. When you look at a newborn child, it's open, it's so open, it's so much space. And after a few months, we are in life. That's why the first part, the earliest parts of our life are super important in education, because in that phase, there's the anchoring of the soul in the body. So when we take care of, especially the first 3 months, is like, that's where we pull in the soul into the physical world, into the body. And that can happen in a very smooth way. We said the love of the parents, in the healthy sense, the love of the parents is the magnet that communicates with the soul of the child. And the child is being pulled in and in and in through the love and through connection, body contact, warmth, emotional connection. So the more healthy is that process, we bring in the subtle energy of the child into the body, and we help it to anchor itself in the body. And especially in our time, the degree of disembodiment is very high. So trauma and all kinds of lifestyles that support us to pull the energy more into the mental sphere, and also that the evolutionary step that we are making at the moment as humans is a very scientific, rational step, so that if that's connected to the body, it's perfect, fantastic. That's where we should be right now. But if it's disconnected from the body, then it supports that we don't feel nature. We don't feel life. That's why we need to think so much about life, because we don't feel it. Sometimes I say these concepts, many concepts and interpretations about life are just bridging our inability to be related. So then I need a concept. If I don't feel it, I need to know something about it. But if I feel it, I can know something about it. It can inspire me. I can learn a lot. I can study a lot, which is fantastic, because it gives me skills that I can embody. So then the rational age anchors itself through the emotions and through the body in the world. So if the noosphere, the sphere of thoughts, is kind of anchored through our bodies in the planet, fantastic. That's I think where is the healthy evolution right now. But if it's anchored only partly, then it starts to spin, and it spins and spins more. And then I need a concept, then I need to know what's my life purpose, that somebody tells me my life purpose, because first of all, I don't feel it maybe. And secondly, then I start running around with my life purpose as an idea, not as a felt inner contact to myself, that I know moment to moment my life purpose is unfolding because I'm connected to the generator. I'm connected to my soul, and via my soul to the divine. And that's why I'm powered by God. So if I'm connected to the source, that's where the power comes from. That's where the exhaling of life, that's where expression, creativity, participation, and relation comes from. So then I feel myself as a part of the whole. Of course, there's a uniqueness, and that uniqueness is all the time connected to everything. It's a supercomputer, even if we have one workstation. But that's that's very important, because the more I feel disconnected from the source, the more I feel like it's just about me. It's about my life. Spirituality is about my life. Spirituality is not about my life. Spirituality is about life. Awakening is about life. So it opens my life to life. But it doesn't pull me out, it brings me back in. And through in, I'm connected to everything, through a healthy self-contact. When the self-contact reverberates more and more back into the source, that's where every moment is a rebirth of the whole universe. Every moment is an emergence of the whole universe. But the more I'm caught up in time and space and history and trauma, and so the more I'm bound into a condition. And that condition I call my life. The more it opens up, more presence starts to happen, more integration of the past into now. And that's why I have a healthy premonition sometimes of what's going to come. That's why I receive visions where my life's going. That's why I listen moment to moment to the conductor, like a musician that listens to the conductor and is in contact with the conductor. So then my life purpose is a moment to moment to moment unfolding. Then nobody needs to tell me what's my life purpose. I can get feedback in order to see myself clearer through somebody that sees me deeply. That's fantastic. So I can learn, but the learning is more like a reconnection of myself to myself and to a bigger self in the depth of consciousness. And so that we are aware, I came to this through the degree of disembodiment, because the degree of disembodiment is where that energy, higher energy, cannot fully land and ground itself in the planet. And we said already, I believe, that human beings are not on the planet, they are the walking planet. We are animations of the animated planet. And that means enlightenment, or the embodiment of enlightenment, is that then the future will embody itself. For example, now the rational and scientific age will embody itself through us in the world. And then I think it's an absolute blessing. If it helps us to just put wooden plates on top of the holes in the street, then we just need to be aware that our streets are full of holes, deep holes, and they are just wooden plates covering them up. For some cars, that's not sufficient. So they will break. And so that means that rational interpretations and rational stories will compensate on our lack to be anchored in ourselves and our lack to be related. And we don't want to replace relation through concepts, not the relation to myself, not the relation to you, not the relation to the world, and not the relation to the divine. That's an in-the-moment process. And if all the methods and all the theories and everything that we do leads up to the fact that we are more and more connected to that inner kind of groundedness in ourselves in life, and that we have the capacity to listen, then everything we do, and especially now the blessing of the scientific age, will ground itself, the blessing of the technological age will ground itself through our beings in the world. And that's why it's a healthy development. And everywhere where it's not grounded, it will show side effects and symptoms and over rationalizations. And because we are lost, we are constantly looking for more information. It's great that we find out more about life, because that's our journey. And that's also where one question came in that I think is important. What is the will to live, and what is the fear of death? And if I want to live, am I just afraid to die? Kind of, I repeat this in my words. And I believe that our life is an absolute yes to life. Life wants to live. The light in us is a yes. The divine is a yes. God's a yes. So it's full creativity. And it has a directionality. It's kind of yes. And so whenever in our life there's a maybe or a no to life, so then we know that through pain and trauma and shadow, we started to dissociate and disconnect, and it creates a gap. But because we have been born into a life full of gaps, full of traumatized, individually or culturally traumatized fields, so that seems like to be normal. That's how we live. But I believe it's that we notice that basically inherent to our drive of life, and we see it if somebody is connected deeply inside and we feel our drive, we wake up and we are joyful. We wake up and we feel, yes, that's my life. And even if you have challenges in your life, and if you feel, this doesn't mean that there are no challenges or that there are no difficulties in life, but the basic underlying force is yes. Yes, I know that I am in my life. Yes, I know that that's exactly what I want to be doing. And yes, I will be listened if I reach a threshold of my energy where maybe what I do today shifts, and then I need to listen. Then for some time, maybe I don't know what's my direction. But if I am in a transition phase, sometimes that needs listening, contemplating, deepening until a new energy comes in. That's a very important phase in some people's lives, that we feel, okay, one phase of my evolution is done. And then that's where, for example, why people go on sabbaticals, why they take a year off and just listen, because we refresh the browser. We are not caught up in our running, and then I'm just a prisoner of my life. I want to keep and cultivate a certain spaciousness so that I'm a conscious participant of life, not a prisoner of life. So that I'm not just identified with my life, so I can make space to listen and refresh or recalibrate or realign my movement. So I listen to the movement of life. And then there's a healthy reconnection, maybe adaptation, and then our life stays also more fresh. That we are not repeating things too long when we feel they're already over, but just my fear keeps me doing it because I don't know what else I should be doing. But that these are the moments where I can listen to the energy. So healthy embodiment, learning to close the gaps, and trauma and shadow and strong conditioning, and maybe not having enough support to embody our attachment process. Many things lead to to the fact that I might not be fully embodied, and the reconnection and the grounding is a deep aspect of spiritual practice, I believe. And then to see that we all have a will to live. Our nature is to want to live, I believe, to be alive, to fulfill our life's contract with the divine. Because the reason that we are alive means we have a contract. But through karma, as we said, and then energy comes down and they go through the collective and more family systems and then individual karma fields. So then that often leads to a disconnect. And a disconnect is, I often describe it as if you were to walk on an iced over river and you say, oh, I'm not getting wet. Yeah, because under the ice, there's river, there's a direction, there's a movement. Standing on the ice, we don't feel the movement. And trauma is in a way like that. It's like there's movement, there's the soul, there's the river, and I don't feel it. And because I don't feel it, then all the compensation starts, all the scaffolding that we build on top of it starts. And one big reason why I say all of it is, first of all, that we enjoy really to be alive. And I believe the divine wants us to be fully alive, wants us to live our life as fully and honestly and joyful and expressive as it works. And there is also a completing of cycles, we said last time. There's a completing of that at a certain stage in my life, even if I live fully, I might feel that the energy is done. And then maybe it goes into a transition to a new energy. That's what most probably also many of us experienced, or some of us experienced already, that we were fully on a drive and it felt like a yes. And then there was a phase when we needed a recalibration in our life. And that's a healthy process. For some people, one stream continues for a long time. For other people, it's times, and then we recalibrate, we reattune, and then we get nourished by another stream of energy. So it's not for everybody the same. And the same as life purpose is not for everybody the same. Some people have a strong calling. They know when they're 3, they're going to become a musician, and they play all their life an instrument, and that's what fulfills them. But that's not for everybody. That's also, like, of course, in different disciplines, but not everybody has this kind of main intelligence drive throughout our life. So for many people, it's a composition and it's a reattunement to be walking. Not everybody has this kind of next 30 years vision and knows exactly that's where I'm going. Some people come like this. They have this zack. They know exactly, and some of the people know also exactly how their life's going to unfold. But if that's not the case, it doesn't mean that something's missing. And I believe I see often people that have a strong stress with not having that certainty. But that not having that certainty also means that I need to be able to relax into now. And often when we relax into now, all the fears of our past come up because we don't want to be in the now out of a reason. So the search for purpose shouldn't be a reinforcement to not face our base, our resting, that we can sit here, that we can exhale as we did it in our meditations, and that if I don't have such a strong vision, I can do spiritual practice for it, I can go on vision quests, but if it's not showing up in my life, this is it. As I say in the prayer, I'm grateful for what I see. I'm grateful for what stays hidden, because this is thy will, and that's why I'm here. So the hierarchy of the process is clear. I'm bowing down in front of the divine because that's why I'm here. Which means I have a contract with the divine. My life is a contract with the divine. Life has a question through my life, through everybody's life. And that's why it needs to be clear what's the hierarchy. And if that hierarchy is clear, then if the divine, the mystical practice is my first priority, then I will keep it throughout the thresholds of my life. Then marriage is a reconnection to the divine and the blessing of the relationship architecture that two people bring together. And it increases the resources in order to deal with the relationship difficulties. Because we all bring relationship karma into an intimate relationship. But if it's clear what's our first priority, then the relationship is part of it. Not I have a bit of meditation in my relationship. I have a relationship within my meditation. That's different. I have a death within my meditation. I have my life within the divine. That's a different hierarchy. And so today I want to speak a bit about that. Let's say there is a family system. How the we space is a very important function when one person lives life. And I believe the reason is that, especially in families, once we are genetically connected, we are part of a family system. It's like we said it is if I take my shirt and I draw a family system on my shirt, and then it's connected through a fabric. If there are wrinkles, or if I distort the shirt, the whole system will be distorted. So the whole drawing on the shirt will be kind of subject to that distortion. And on the other hand, the death in a family system is, of course, first of all, part of life. Secondly, as we said before, it's a threshold. And most of all, it's already being handed over to the divine. I'm not adding spirituality to my life. I'm adding my life to spirituality. So in some of the online classes, we talked about the bus. I think in the early mystical principle classes, we talked about the bus. And that when on the bus is written where the bus is going to. And we said the awakening bus has a seat for relationship, has a seat for work, has a seat for expression, has a seat for everything. But it's clear what's written on the bus. But we can also sit in the bus of relationship, in the bus, and it has a seat for spirituality, it has a seat for work, it has a seat for, and so on. So when I know the original hierarchy of life, so I devote my life to the divine, to awakening, to the ultimate presence, or isness, and every part of my life will be part of it, and I can use the thresholds wisely because they're energetic compositions that are very beneficial for karma integration. So when we, for example, as parents, if we had more parent schools, and we would be supported more by an environment that helps us from birth to integrate our shadows that come up through our children, that get triggered, that's a fantastic thing to have. Like a marriage is a threshold. So we open the energy, the light comes in and helps two people to transform masculine, feminine dynamics that are thousands of years old. They have lots of trauma often and have lots of history. So we add resources. And if somebody dies, the veils open up as well. The veils between the physical and the subtle reality open. And that's why that moment is a threshold. And that's why we can use it to clear more karma. But in order to clear more karma, it needs two things. It needs to recognize what's the priority, a vertical alignment, and it needs horizontal alignment relation. And these are the two forces that we need to kind of bring together in the moment, like if you support somebody in the death process or dying process, and also through the transition. That's why we all, like the past, the unconscious past, like the karma that we deal with in our life, is twofold. That there are structures of consciousness that we inherit, the conscious structures of consciousness that build all our nervous system, our emotional system, systems in society, that build scientific research projects. So that's fantastic. This is something that we learned as humanity that we can count on. But then there are these unconscious energies that also create structures that are shadow structures and they just repeat themselves until they become conscious structures and can grow. And that's why the karma that we deal with in trauma, in shadow work, or that we look at or experience when we have difficulties, so that's something that repeats the past. And if it's not being illuminated, I believe it's going to continue repeating the past. And as long as we are alive, the electricity through our body is the physical representation of the light that has the power to transform life. But for this, the chip, our body, our soul, needs to be implemented in our body, and our body can transform the past of the planet Earth into a new possibility. That's the whole mystical work about. And I believe that's what modern therapy is built on, that we transform the past, we illuminate it, and we allow it to become the fuel for our further evolution. And when we go to the moment of death, so in the moment this electricity is unplugged, the power to, or the possibility to transform karma, because just because we're alive, it's not necessarily said that we will burn our karma or transform our karma. But there's a potential. So when we are alive, that engine is on. And through consciousness work, what all of us are interested in, we are increasing the possibility that we are transforming karma. We open life, we open our past so that we are more present. And that's what invites a new future. And so to come back to this family system, so that's why, for example, a circle of prayer, a circle of meditation, a circle of relation, a circle of vulnerability, emotional process that we go through as relatives, or also as people that are in our own death process, when we allow ourselves the vulnerability, our deepest humanity, as said sometimes, is our highest possibility. Which means that in the deep humanity, in the vulnerability of being a human being, we can ground our spirit the most. So in the vulnerability of having an emotional process, not trying to be a distant observer, but to be an observer of vulnerability, like a deep connection to life, and have a capacity to witness that, we are already transforming energy. And basically the system, in the moment somebody kind of ascends out of a family system, the electricity is turned off, but the veils are open. The veils between this world and the afterworld is open. So we said the etheric body, this thin layer around the body that some people describe when they become more open, that they can see a layer around the body. That's vitality, that's life energy that the body produces. And in the moment that this dissipates, it disconnects the subtle body from the physical body, and the subtle body travels through the astral plane to the subtle plane, and the physical body dies. And so when that process is open, our prayers, the prayers of people that stay here, in a way bring in light, and light is a new possibility. So when the veils are open, and our first priority is the divine, doesn't matter on which side we are, then we bring in a new possibility. We actually hold the gate open for the future. We support evolution. However we want to say it, it's grounding a new possibility within the karmas that reproduce old possibilities. As we said, unconscious energy is destiny. Unconscious energy is the road that I take from behind and I put it in front of me. Which means I repeat through pattern, we call it today patterns. I take the past from behind and I reproduce it in front of me. Then I walk this road and I call it tomorrow. But actually tomorrow is a repetition of yesterday, or last week, or last month, or last life. So I put it in front of me, but there's always the possibility to be connected to the light, which brings in a new possibility, like a new road that has a course correction. Healing and integration is a course correction, a fundamental healing in somebody's life, not just polishing one layer, but if energy really changes, usually a person's life, instead of going there, suddenly goes there. And after some time, that's significantly different. So instead of the road continuing that way, it continues a bit into a different direction. And that's amazing. We can see that when people's lives change and open up and new possibilities come in. And so after energy transformed, often certain limitations seem to drop away and new possibilities come into people's life. And it's continuing. Why? Because that's what life wants. Life in its essence wants to live. And the same is also when the karmic energy, when the electricity gets disconnected, then the karmic energy that has not been transformed up to this day, it stays in the system. And as long as the veils are open and we are in that process, so when we gather together and families come together, when the community also comes together and supports it, like the community is like a ring of presence, a ring of witnessing, also a ring of support that gives the families possibility to really be with their attention in what's happening in them, what's happening in relation to the person that left. So when we allow our grieving process, when we allow our human emotions are the fabric of life, of relation. So when somebody dies, there's a natural wave of emotions that appear in us. And that's healthy. That says that we are connected, that we are healthily attached to life, and that we care. And so, but that's not a kind of a burden. That's a deep way of feeling, I believe, as a human being, and that shows that I'm connected to life, that I'm part of the fabric. So, if we allow that process, it helps us that the fabric that is connected can healthily digest. We talked last time also about the exhale and the switching of the nervous system from activation into relaxation is also the digesting process of life, the digestion of life. So we need space and time to digest, to have the experience, to let it run through, to be present with it. And then slowly, that wave is going to finish and it completes a cycle. And And so that's the more human part of it. And the spiritual part of it is that through prayer, through meditation, contemplation, through rituals where we come together, or funerals, for example, the original meaning of a funeral was to connect the whole situation, the family and the soul that's leaving, deeper to the light, in order to support that process and use the moment also to transform still karma, because now the letters are more open. You remember the sacred text? Letters are open. The letter is not just what it says. The letter is a transmitter of energy. The letter is open. In the regular text, the letter is more closed. It describes a possibility of life. And so, and they are all good. Like we need all those books. What I'm saying is, when the letters are open, mystically, it says that reality is subject to change. When the letters are closed, that's our reality. The more light we bring in, the more somebody is inspired. Also, books have a stronger transmission up to a real sacred text that is open. That is not what we read. We can read any sacred text and read a story. But basically, it's open in many dimensions for us to get consciousness upgrades. So in that, or during that threshold, the letters of life are more open. That's why we can transform family karma through attention, through relation, through our vulnerability, through light. Bringing in higher light brings in higher future. Or with other words, the only future is our higher consciousness. That's where innovation, creativity, everything comes through light. So that in our nervous systems we receive light, and we call it, we have an idea. But that idea was a drop of light that coated itself into a mental substance. Then we get excited, we have an emotional substance, and then we feel it in our body, so we ground it in life and we make it into a project. Light, one coat is the mental, another coat the emotional, another coat the physical, and the grounding in the planet. So we build a project that you can see, a movement, a social movement, a company, whatsoever. It's kind of, you see it created a sculpture in the fabric of the planet. But originally, it was a frequency of consciousness. It was that somebody or a group of people or multiple people received through their nervous systems and were able to ground, and now we call it real. But most of the real things, like a cinema, was not always real. There were times when it was just a drop of light. There were times when people had it in their minds. And now you can watch all kinds of movies and we call it real. That's normal. Why? Because there are many cinemas all around the world. It's a social, cultural sculpture. And of course, that process goes on and on and on. But we can use that process also. The light, the essence of the light, can help us to transform the unconscious past and illuminate it. So when we bring in light into a family system, friends, the community, so the light will help us to illuminate the unseen parts, because we are emotionally open and touched. It intensifies it, except we become very isolated and pulled back. But if we allow our emotions, the light has a much easier access into our bodies. And within our bodies, the light can transform the past. So that's why it's a strong healing or integration moment. It's a threshold. And in the mythologies, it has been described, those thresholds since thousands of years. I think we need a modern kind of version of it, but it's a possibility to integrate a lot of karma. Otherwise, the karma stays, because not anymore in the body, it stays in the system. So life needs to take care of it in another way. And that's what we want to do through rituals, like, for example, the mystical funerals, where rituals, how we attend to the situation in a given way, so that the engine is open. And as I said, it's very important that we are looking at death or funerals or families as our offering to the divine. I'm not bringing a bit of spirituality into the moment of death. The moment of death is held in my first priority. For the mystical teachings, God's always the first priority. So that means I offer my life to the divine, and then I listen and I strengthen throughout my life through humility, through inner listening, through clarifying my shadows, my traumas, my life, to become a vessel that can more and more congruently walk, reduce after time, come more into the present moment, and where being and becoming meet in the heart, and that the heart becomes kind of a center of presence, that where life's included, 2017 is included, the past is included, the future is included, and in the present moment. But the present moment is not now, almost 1 hour after we started. It's the present moment is that which embraces, the consciousness that embraces that kind of cross of the future, the past, and the world. And so maybe it's good that we let this sink in a bit through kind of a meditation. We give it a bit of space to digest, and then I will refine it a bit more, and then we can open space for questions. Yeah, so let's sit back, relax, and again, to start with the body. And it seems so simple, but I believe, given that the body is hundreds of thousands of years or millions of years of history sitting here, the wisdom of that unbroken line of life, every one of us looked, I think, as we said already, into our family tree and beyond and beyond and beyond into the past. You see an unbroken will, like a stream of light that goes back eons and eons and eons. So life wants to live. Life wants to be life. And it sits here in all of us. All our bodies represent the wisdom and the pain that life reached till this day. So the bodies are sacred temples. They hold the whole information of evolution so far. And they're interconnected. So when I drop with my breath, my exhale into my body, of course I feel my body as I feel it. And I also look at the sense into like a refined biocomputer. And it's great to honor everything that life achieved so far, to build a complex nervous system, to build a complex emotional system, to have millions of cells and bacteria and many other components working together. That's very refined. And that lifetimes and lifetimes and lifetimes of echoing, experience after experience, to sit here today. When I tune in with my body, all of it is present. And still, every time you exhale, let the exhale take you a little bit deeper into body awareness, the sitting, and also to notice how the exhale ripples down deep into the ground. And when, before the next inhale starts, there's a lovely moment of stillness. There's a moment of space. And then, of course, to include also your emotional and mental life right now. This point in your life, are you emotionally kind of more quiet, balanced? Do you feel emotionally triggered? And again, to look at it with compassion and not something to get fixed, or to become aware of. Same as the state of your mind, kind of a screenshot of the interior. And it's a competence to be able to tell moment to moment what's our inner process, what's our anchoring in the body, emotions, thoughts. all of them are coherent, aligned, and synchronized, or fragmented. And if it's fragmented, to see it as a childhood hero more than a dysfunction. Fragmentation that was necessary at a certain moment of our lives. An intelligence that we need to listen to. And then again, also to notice the dimension of inner space, like the stillness, the witnessing that my current experience is held, embedded in a bigger dimension of conscious awareness. And then if you want, we can, as a second step, also look at get a sense of the fabric of your core family, and tune in with the qualities, karmas, resources of the conscious and the unconscious aspects of the family system that has been drawn upon the fabric of life. As part of a lineage and a channel of light wanting to live. So what are the resources and what are the karmas or shadowy aspects? Or what is the first impression when you just call upon, set the intention to tune in with your family system? What are the first sensations that you get? And it doesn't matter if it's pleasant, or if it's unpleasant. Let's honor whatever appears first without judging or interpreting it. Once you have a first impression, keep on contemplating, presencing, keep on listening, and let more qualities appear so that you get a more refined impression of these are the energies, qualities that are present in my family system. And see which ones you try to like to take in and which ones you would like to refuse. In other words, what is pleasant and what feels maybe unpleasant. And then as our third step, we can stay grounded in that and then move for a moment upwards and again open the space above our heads. Set the intention to connect to light, the soul, the higher self, however you call it, a higher consciousness. Open yourself or move your awareness from the top of your head higher, and can turn your vision, your looking, your inner looking upwards. Feel above your head and keep feeling and looking, maybe until you meet a certain level of illumination, kind of light experience, or kind of energetic downward stream. Maybe it's not a visual but a felt impression. And once you have a kind of a sense of either a downward streaming or like a sense of light, then let it gently flow through your body or into your body, from the head down via the heart, down, if possible, to the legs, or however deep it wants to flow, without creating a pressure. Just keeping and keep the attention also open above the crown, creating a coherence between the higher consciousness, the future, new possibilities, and the past. And then at the end, if you want to either say a prayer or set an intention for your life, let's use the openness right now here in our group. You can say it in your own words or hold it either in your heart or send it high above into the light. Repeat it 2 times and then let it go. And then once you're done with it, let's take a couple of deeper breaths. And slowly come back. Good. So maybe it's good also to, as a homework, if you want, to write down, like when you tune in with your own family system, the karmas of our family system. And this is two things, as we said. These are the more unconscious fields, also the parts in our family system that we try to avoid. And of course, the resources, the connection, the love, the power, the ground, the clarity, the intelligence in the system. So that I think it's nice that there's kind of gives us a holographic information about our birth. We did it with the birth blueprint. It's a bit similar. But also if you do it as, okay, when I tune in, what kind of qualities do I feel when I ground myself in my family system? What are the parts that I really love? What are the parts that feel connected? In some family systems, there's a lot of disconnect. In some family systems, it feels very connected, held, warm. And then, of course, the more I tune in, the more I can maybe surface more refined information. And that's also important because when we talked about the threshold of death and dying and how we bring light into, like what we did now in a way, and we bring light into the past, then there's always a little bit of consciousness that's, or sometimes a lot of consciousness that's added to the mainly unconscious dynamics that create recurrent patterns, because as long as they are not brought into conscious awareness, they run our lives unconsciously. And the more we relate, illuminate, and integrate to those dynamics, so then they become our allies. Otherwise, it looks like they are kind of our enemies, which is, of course, not true, but that's how we often experience it. And that's why I often say, and I say it again and again, that the reframing, cultural reframing that's necessary, I believe, is that what we so-called weaknesses or difficulties are often our childhood heroes, and that if we related to them that way, so instead of pushing them further out, we take them more in. So if I tune in with my family system and the other parts that I kind of don't want to have, so that's not a difficulty, that's like a part that needs to be listened to in order for me to become like a transforming consciousness to illuminate those past tendencies. So we said basically that the family system holds a past, and in the thresholds we have the chance to transform energy, because often we are more vulnerable, more open, also emotionally more moved. That's a fantastic gateway for light to come into the emotions and into the body. We said that hundreds of thousands of years sit in our body. So the light needs to go, the transformation of energy happens through the body and opens the body, the information that's stored in the body, and allows a new possibility. So it's kind of taking a new chip, computer chip, and plugging it into the supercomputer. And there, through the life energy, it gets energized into a new possibility. So that's how we transform the world, or how we ground innovation, and how we reform cultures and societies in order to be more functional, more inclusive, more kind of aware. And so that's definitely possible in all the thresholds. And that's why the ritual of a funeral, the ritual of being very present, being connected, inviting light, either through prayer, through the light meditation, through or through like a deeply trained capacity. That's why usually, like the representation of a priest, like a truly connected priest, was supposed to bring in light in order to help the transformation of the karma and to create a kind of a generating force within that open time window to help the karmas to open up, but also to bring in wisdom to for both sides. The soul that is leaving is more held by somebody that is aware of that process, and the family system is more held, and the friends and the community is more held through the wisdom how to be a partner in the process and be kind of a contribution in both directions for the soul that is leaving, for the transformation of the karma here, and for the new possibility of life that the family and the relatives and also the friends and the community continues onwards. And then those moments, those rituals in life are basically one expression of our deep devotion, one expression of our like dedication to life, that life is my spiritual practice in every part of my life. And maybe in certain parts, we need to adapt our spiritual practice, to add something to our practice, to readjust our practice. It's not like one thing. No, we are living in cycles. We are living in different phases of our life, and they need different practices. Some of them will stay the same. Some of them will be added. But it's a difference if somebody is single or somebody is recently became a parent. So that needs an adjustment. And so that's why there's a beauty in practicing a spiritual practice within culture, within the marketplace. The energy cycles of our life, basically, and those moments in our life, they're important, and we need to align with them and live in alignment. So that's why we are never in the wrong time. Our age is always the perfect age, because the energy cycle, we just sometimes not fully aligned with our age, but our age is the exact right energy that we should be living in. There is no better one. That's exactly the energy that has the highest capacity of living for now, and the highest capacity of transformation for now. So we always have the right birthday. It's that's the time. And it's always the right time. Except we live in after time, then it doesn't feel that way. Then it seems like as if there was another possibility. And that's the same with life and death. It seems like as if there is another possibility than to be alive. But that's a function, most of the cases, it's a function of dissociation, and it's not feeling the river because I'm standing on the ice. Creates all kinds of symptoms, and one of them is that I don't want to live. But that's why, because I don't feel the water. That's why for people that feel very depressed, or it's very important that we create, that's also kind of a community function. That's when we need to be very available for life, and that every one of us, in order to create a healthy culture, like in the mystical traditions is often described as 10% of our time, of our energy, we give back to the culture, because the culture needs some support in order to be a functional culture. So the collective gets energized by us contributing parts of our energy to, not too much because that might hurt our own energy, but the right amount. And if everybody does it, so we create a very supportive, warm holding for culture, and everybody will feel drawn to contribute somewhere else. But that's an important function. So I live my life, but there's also one part that I give, and it's not I give and I want something back. I give it because that's my contribution to the culture. And if that's the right amount, so then I do my life energy contributes to the cultural grid, and same as others, and that's what creates a very important net. That's what creates a very important caring for the all, or for culture. And I think that aspect we also see that we really come together and we support people in those moments. We support those thresholds because we understand their wisdom, and that it's a contribution to evolution, because every unconscious past that gets transformed into presence allows a new possibility to come in, which means that the spiritual practice, the awareness practice, the integration practice always opens the gates for innovation to come in, and for innovation to come in into, like, that the seeds of innovation can really land in the soil of our planet. And our bodies, in a way, are the soil of the planet, where the great new innovations can embody themselves. As we said, we take a chip, the drop of light is like a computer chip, we plug it into the body, and the body energizes it with chi and grows a new tree, or part of a tree, and that becomes a social sculpture. So that's how spirit becomes metta. That's how higher consciousness illuminates life.
Yeah, thank you very much, Thomas. Very beautiful and powerful teachings, I think. And yeah, very helpful, I think, to be so precise about what it is that dies as we transition and cross this threshold, and what it is that lives on, and what we can also then do individually and collectively to support more light coming in and the possibility of more transformation still. And there are a lot of questions about that people have been writing in about, particularly about transgenerational karma, and I'm maybe going to try and wrap a couple of these together. There was a question actually before we started about the nature of intergenerational trauma. And someone says, if I transform transgenerational trauma, what's the effect on my parents and grandparents, dead or alive? Does this affect their access point when they leave this life, or with what consciousness they will be reborn? And then linked a little bit to that, someone says, what happens if the family members are no longer alive? Are we still able to transform transgenerational trauma? Is constellation work, for example, a helpful way to do that? And maybe just to link and bridge a third question into that, if that's okay, which is about what is the karma that has the chance to transform? Is it the karma of the relational family system, or is it the karma of individuals who are related to the member who's passed? Is it the individual karma of the one who is passing? Is there a relational family karma that we can infuse more light into and potentially transform?
All of it, yes, and all of it. Yeah, that's interesting. Here's a person, and here is the ancestral tree. And this goes on and on and on. So life So let's make this nicer. So when energy comes in here, if here is the soul, and so there's, let's say, through the relation to the parents, there's trauma from here wired in here, but this trauma came from the grandparents and transmitted itself here. So within the tree, and there's another issue here that resurfaces here and here. So within the tree, there's a conscious field and there's an unconscious field. These unconscious shadows, they also create a field here. So that's not just an individual separate particle, it's also a wave field. So that's both things. We are all, like if I look at Robin, for example, and now if 500 people look at Robin, Robin is seemingly a person, like a human being sitting somewhere, but Robin is in all of us perception. Robin is a wave field that we all create. 500 people looking, or when you look at me, I'm a particle, but I am a wave field. I'm appearing in many people's brains and perception and consciousness, and all of them connected create a wave field that is connected to the seeming particle that's out there. So everybody is kind of a particle, but also a wave field because we appear in each other. But when we appear in each other, we are already coated in each other's perception. Because when you see me in you. And that means there's a field and there's a particle. And so the same is here, like the trauma is an actual trauma that happened maybe in the 1914, and then it appears again here in 2017 as symptoms. So that transmission of transgenerational trauma, of course, if here energy comes in, illuminates that part leads to a process. The person is like on a spiritual path that doesn't bypass the issues, but really looks at them, integrates them. So there's some trauma integration or transgenerational trauma integration. And this is more and more loosened up. So this, when it's loosening up, when the energy changes, every time energy changes, a condition that life holds, because transgenerational trauma is a condition. It's a highway that has no exit, that needs to go into a way, needs to go into one direction. Why? Because it doesn't have a choice. The choice to kill many people or to inflict a lot of pain in the past has been made already. That choice created a consequence, and that consequence has no free choice. Karma, the unconscious karma always has no choice. It just has a destiny. So, but here, when I'm alive, I can choose to look at it. The choice is in the illumination. I can choose to look at my karma, and if I do so, and I can integrate the energy that is still waiting to be seen, to be felt, to be integrated. Once that choiceless energy is being integrated, we infuse a new choice. So that's what the restoration is about. That's what the Judgment Day is about. It's infusing a choice into a disowned choice. So karma is always a disowned choice. And that's why it's being passed on. That's why the pain is being passed on. It's not being integrated and owned by the fabric of life. It's usually dissociated and disowned, and that's why it needs to come back and come back. And the reason is the self-healing mechanism of life wants it to come back, because it wants it to resurface, because it wants it to be owned. Like our body, it will try to detox, it will try, and as long as the body function is strong enough, it will detox stuff in order to clean the body. Or our minds, thoughts will come up, because they want to discharge the energy that is being stored in our nervous system in order to relax, so that the self-healing mechanism of my body can come back online. But if I don't give my body chance to detox, or to detox the energy that is overloading me every day, so then my body will also not heal so well, because I cannot switch my nervous system into regeneration. And so the choiceless energy through consciousness work, all the spiritual work, is just to infuse a choice into the place that doesn't have a choice, and that's why it needs to reproduce the past. Once a light goes in, it has a choice. So we infuse a new future. So energy flows back down here, and because this condition is inherently connected to this, there's a kind of a bridge. And once this energy is resolved through this bridge, this energy is it gets an impulse of transformation. And that's why my grandfather and I are not separate. That's why when something heals, it changes. It's like when here's the person, and that was the life course so far. When the energy changes here, suddenly the life goes there. I make different choices, I meet different people, I will feel differently in my life, and. So I have a different resonance field, energy that I send out. Here I had a different energy. So the life that I meet here and the life that I meet here is different. And so that's one thing. But energy always sends an impulse into the future. So there's a course correction, and it sends an impulse into the past, and there is a healing. And it doesn't matter if we are alive, if the family system is still alive, if not alive, it doesn't matter. Now, it's not so easy to translate that one-on-one to the question. There was a part of the question if the parents will be reborn in the different state. So once energy goes into the collective field, when we die, our energy goes back into the collective field of the planet, like the collective astral field. So then it's not anymore just that this healing impulse will just affect my parents, but it's going to affect the whole system. So every one of us that does integration work affects the whole system, and the complexity of the system, I think, doesn't allow fully to say that exactly this impulse will match exactly this energy. So because it's more complex, but everything, all the past that we release, brings us back into presence, brings us back into relation, brings us back into a reconnection with the divine. And that's why we have a higher future than we had before. Let's say we have a planet, and the planet is the consciousness of the planet. All the people that are alive right now have a center of gravity, of consciousness. And so that's all the consciousnesses that we bring together has a certain vibration now. So that's the consciousness that we look from, and we are looking at the possibility of dealing with climate change. But that state of consciousness has only a certain amount of possibilities. The more we increase, we dilute those fixed past points, like the karmas that create highways, because in the highway I don't want to change. Not only I don't want to change, I have no choice almost, because I don't choose to really look at it. The choice comes only when I look at it. Otherwise, I just perpetuate my unconscious patterns. And if I perpetuate them, and billions of other people also do it, so the amount of choice that we have is reduced. But the lighter the system becomes, the more we clear up our past, the more we integrate the past, which, not to forget, is not the past in the history books. It's the past that is alive in us right now, because it's energy patterns. So the more we take care through the thresholds, through an aligned life, through a willingness to go to therapy, to do integration work, to do body work, also family constellation. Many methods that have kind of competencies maybe in different areas of integration. All of them together are the capacity, and of course the mystical dimension, have the capacity of self-healing. And the more we apply it, the more karma we really integrate. So on a collective level, we induce, in a way, more possibility, which means more future, which actually means that the planet, through our integration of unconscious karma, grows. The planet's getting bigger. The possibilities of the planets are getting bigger. We have more innovations, we have more scientific breakthroughs, we have more of everything that helps us not only to heal, but to become. And that's amazing, because through every karma that's being integrated, our capacity as humanity to take care of our life issues is growing. The capacity, because we see more, we feel more, our intuition is more online, our inspiration is more online. We don't repeat the past and try to solve our crisis through past tools that led up to the crisis. In crisis or dilemmas, we need future. We don't need the past. The past led us up to here. So how can it help us to get out of here? We need to transcend the crisis through a new impulse. And that's what's often happened, what happened often in the past, that we had some seemingly unsolvable issues and suddenly somebody had an idea, but that idea is part of the innovation capacity of the system. So when the thresholds and our life, like the way we choose to live, and that's why the first choice is, if God's my first choice, then I choose to come back into alignment with the river of life. And of course, my life is the process. But if that's my choice, I increase the resources. Because the light, the conscious awareness is the resource, the main resource how I can release myself and life from the kind of chains of the past. Otherwise, and I often don't know how I reproduce, because it's unconscious. I just see the symptoms, that things happen over and over again. So the resistance of the system to change is often unconscious, but it feels like it's not changing, or it's changing slower. And so that's why and I know I bring it now to a very big level, but that's truly important, because the more people, the more we choose light, light is a metaphor for conscious awareness. The more we illuminate our lives, we integrate the traumas, the transgenerational traumas, or the collective trauma. So the more we integrate it, we open the possibility for many people having many insights, many creative solutions, but also the coherence of the system will be higher. Because the shadow coherence creates an incoherence. So the system is more confused, destabilized, not together, not related, more conflicts. All of this is that the system, one person or in relation to the system, is more incoherent. And the more we look at it, we really want to find our contribution to it, the more the system upgrades itself to a higher coherence. And so we are more related, we collaborate more, we are more unified in our human journey, and that's what makes the intelligence of humanity much, much, much higher. So the race of human intelligence and artificial intelligence is actually, in one way, it's a question of the coherence of the human system. It's because the race is an illusion. I believe it's an illusion. It's just a perfect projection platform for our fears. But what it shows us is that the degree of separation, how we experience ourselves. Of course, we need to do things ethically, and there are challenges. but the challenges at the moment are being experienced through lots of fears. And the upgrade of human intelligence to its supercomputer power depends on our choice to release the choiceless part and bring it back into possibilities and presence, ultimately. Like to come back into alignment with the meridian, with life.
My question is about the family. During the exercise, I felt a lot of rejection, and it's like I feel that I reject my family, and my family in certain way rejects me. But I'm conscious that they are energies. But in one way, my personality suffers, and my conscious wants to integrate this karma and whatever comes with it. But I don't know how to do it when I feel so much toxic relations. It's like if I go into the family, I get intoxicated. So I always try to be in a healthy distance, but in that distance, I don't feel I'm integrating or giving light to the family.
Great. So let's explore, what does it mean intoxicated? Can you explain me what's the process of being intoxicated?
Yeah, when I get in touch and in relation with the family, all the stuff of revenge, competition comes up, but disguised with smile and good intentions. It's like I see two different waves. One, the superficial way is a nice relation, nice talk, sociability, but underneath, I feel and my impression is that there's something different moving.
In you or in your family members?
In my family members, and I get contact with that, and I am the one who is feeling the revenge or the rancor. I don't know if it's rancor.
Right, and that's one thing. But I ask you, when you get intoxicated, what's the process of intoxication in you? This I didn't hear. I heard something about your family members now, but I didn't hear so much about you.
When I get intoxicated, I feel angry. I feel that I want to say all the bad things that I feel, and I feel that I will. It's like I'm poison, and I will beat them.
Right. So let's say, because I think that sometimes the way we name things has kind of fixes them in our consciousness. So maybe from today we can get rid of the word intoxication in that moment, and we can say your family triggers a part in you where you start feeling lots of anger and where lots of energy comes up that maybe is also unspoken. Some of it maybe has been spoken, some of it has not been spoken. But obviously the relation to your family triggers past patterns in you and of course also in the family. But I'm more interested in your part now because I'm speaking to you.
Yeah.
So, because in the moment you call it intoxicated, it seems like something bad's happening to you. Because we all don't want to be intoxicated, we all don't want to be poisoned and whatever. But what I hear is you are not being intoxicated, you're feeling emotions that you maybe partly suppress, and those emotions are in a way the signpost to a deeper process. So when you say instead of because intoxicated means I want to go away from it. I don't want to be there because it's poisoning. But actually it's not poisoning you, because this induces immediately your retraction. And I would love to stay more and say, okay, yes, you're getting angry. Great. So let's have a look. That you get angry is part of your humanity. And now I think if we can just both acknowledge that anger and also all these things that come with the anger that want to go out, and also the, I don't know, maybe making space for yourself in the family system, finding your ground in the family system. And the anger is maybe also a messenger of that process. So that in just saying, okay, I'm getting angry and I'm willing to explore my anger. If I don't push the anger away, if I say, oh, wow, interesting. When I come to my family, I often get triggered and get angry. Or maybe sometimes I get triggered and I get afraid. Or maybe there are more emotions. But these emotions are that's the door in the prison. You know, those emotions is the only doors in your prison, because if in the moment you're in an intoxicating place, all you want to do is leave, but you cannot leave really. You can physically leave, but your family will be like a tail that walks with you, like these cars with all the cans after just getting married, and it makes a lot of noise, and it doesn't matter where you drive, it will still be there. So the only exit is, like, the emotions are actually the blessing that show you, here is the door. Maybe the door is not open yet, but that's the door. And so I think the anger is a pathway into, like, listening to the anger will connect you to a need. And then it will be very interesting what kind of need is underneath the anger. What do you need in your family? What's the need that you have that is more connected to your core, that is more connected to your vulnerability? So through the anger, you go down a pipe to the needs. And if you listen to the need, then it doesn't matter if it's at the moment being met or not. That's not the point. But you are more connected to your energy. You will find out what's the need in you. What's my need with my family? And maybe that's usually a need that hasn't been fulfilled much earlier. And now it's just reactivated every time. So most probably all of us on the line know this in some way, how we meet those unnourished, unfulfilled parts again and again. If you just, here we have not so much time that we can go into a whole session with this, but if you just tell me, what do you think is the need that your anger reminds me of, an unmet need?
I'm clear what is the need. My need is to be seen and to be recognized. It's like I always felt, I was shown that I was always the different in the family. And what I feel is when I'm not recognized, I cannot be or grow in the becoming in relation with them.
That's right. And now let's breathe for a moment and let's hear what you said. So I want to be seen, I want to be recognized, and I feel that I cannot fully take my place in this family system. To feel supported and seen in my intelligence, and that I get the feeling I can grow in relation, because there was a certain sense of alienation. And we just let this sentence breathe a bit, like when you open a bottle of wine and you let the wine breathe. So let's have this sentence and breathe and feel it in the body, and how this sentence feels in the body, in the emotions, in your thoughts. Yeah. Because the reason why I'm saying this is not that, I mean, right now in this interaction here, we're gonna solve it. But the need, even if you say, okay, this need is not being met in my family, but the need connects you to your energy. And the need today, as a grown-up woman, you have other possibilities to, first of all, just to feel it and to listen to it inside yourself. That makes this part more open, like you feel the energy flow in you that expresses itself as this need. And secondly, I think in grounding yourself, and even in just us connecting to your need, and that you can feel that I hear your need, I understand your need, and I feel you in your need, creates a relation with that need, or to that need, that is inside of you, and at the moment right now outside of you. So it connects, it's like a pendulum, it connects the need inside and outside. Because I can imagine that with that feeling that I'm not being seen and recognized in my family, it feels like a bit like as if you need to run against the wind, and you're trying and you're trying and you're trying, and it's not working, it's not working, it's not working. And so, like, when in the moment you say, okay, yes, I can for a moment, instead of trying to fight against the storm, I just come back, bring it into myself, connect, and that energy connects right now to me, or then maybe to somebody else that you trust, that is at the moment in your life, that can hear you there. And that starts to begin a bigger network around this gap. And usually when there is a gap, so I see you running against the wind, and then I see your family, and there's a gap, there's kind of a valley in between. And we need to find a way how to build a bridge. But the bridge doesn't come from trying to jump more and fall down and trying to jump more. So that doesn't work. So we need to go and find another way. And so the emotion, the need to relate that need at first to somebody else, like to somebody that you work with, like me at the moment, some people that you trust, practice partners, and to strengthen it, and then to look how that felt rejection, what is rejection being composed out of? The feeling of rejection. Rejection is not a feeling. Rejection is a consequence of an unfelt feeling. So if I feel I cannot get to somebody, and I feel sad, I feel afraid, I feel angry, and after some time I take those feelings back, then I feel distant and rejected. And that's why I believe that always to bring a process back to the main basic building blocks, the most simple feelings that we have, and to these mental words like rejection, intoxication, and so on, like interpretations, to bring them back to an alive experience. How do I feel when I feel rejected? What are the emotional building blocks of rejection? What are the emotional building blocks of intoxication? What is a felt sense of a need? Because once you're reconnected to the experience, you feel yourself. And from there, you connect to your resources, and you can build, first of all, a net with somebody else. And then I think that will help you to bring transformation back into your family system, because you transform. So that's what I would recommend for now in this 10 minutes we had. Yeah, how do you feel with what I said? Does this land with you or resonate?
Yes. Yes, for me, it's like you are giving me a next way. It's like being in front of a wall, and I'm very clear in what my feelings are under those words. So I will go through them.
Oh, good. I'm very happy. Yeah, and thank you for sharing this in front of everybody here. It's always a gift for all of us. Thank you.